Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
What if the hardest thing that ever happened to you was actually the most important thing that ever happened for you? Because what I'm about to share with you today isn't a motivational speech. It isn't a list of tips, and it certainly isn't someone telling you to just be positive. What this is a conversation between you and me in a quiet room about the things that broke you open and what was actually waiting inside when they did. I want to talk about setbacks, real ones. The kind that don't just knock the wind out of you. They change the entire shape of who you thought you were. The loss of a marriage. The betrayal of someone you trusted completely. The diagnosis that rewrote your future in a single afternoon. The child you couldn't reach no matter how hard you tried. The dream you watched quietly die while everyone around you moved on. If any of those words just landed somewhere tender inside you, then you are exactly who this video was made for. Stay with me. Here is something that took me years to understand, and something that the greatest psychological research of our time now confirms. We were never taught how to lose. From the time we were small girls, we were taught how to achieve, how to be good daughters, good students, good wives, good mothers. We were handed a map for building, not for surviving when everything we built fell apart. And so when the setbacks came, because they always come, we didn't have a vocabulary for our own pain. We called it weakness. We called it failure. Some of us called it God's punishment. We said things to ourselves that we would never say to a woman we loved. I should be over this by now. Other people have it so much worse. What is wrong with me? Can I tell you something gently but with absolute certainty? There is nothing wrong with you. Your grief is not a character flaw. Your pain is not a sign of weakness. Your inability to simply snap out of it is not a spiritual failure. It is proof that you loved, that you invested, that you were fully, beautifully present in the life that you built. And the wound you're carrying, it doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be understood. You were never taught how to lose gracefully, but you were always strong enough to survive it. That is not weakness. That is wisdom earned the hard way. The psychologist Dr. Edith Eger, herself a Holocaust survivor, wrote something that stopped me cold. She said that the greatest prison we live in is not one built by our circumstances. It is the one we construct from our own beliefs about what those circumstances mean about us. Think about that for a moment. We don't just experience the setback, we interpret it. We decide, consciously or not, what that setback says about our worth, our lovability, our future, our God, and most of us have been carrying interpretations that were never true. The divorce didn't mean you were unlovable. The estrangement didn't mean you failed as a mother. The loss of your health didn't mean your life is over. The grief that still rises after 20 years, it doesn't mean something is broken in you. It means you are human. Deeply, beautifully, irreversibly human. Now I want to talk about resilience. Because I think we've been told a lie about what resilience actually looks like. We've been shown images of resilience as this fierce, unstoppable force, fists clenched, jaw set. I will not be broken. But that's not resilience. Real resilience, the kind that the research of Dr. George Brene at Columbia University has documented across thousands of people, real resilience is far quieter, far more ordinary, and far more accessible than we've been told. It looks like making breakfast even though your heart is hollow. It looks like answering the phone even when you'd rather disappear. It looks like saying, I'm not okay, to someone safe, and letting them sit with you in that truth. Here is what the science tells us, and here is what I have witnessed in the lives of the most extraordinary women I've known. Resilience is not the absence of falling apart. It is the willingness to be put back together. And that willingness, it is an act of profound courage. We live in a culture that is terrified of grief. We medicate it, schedule it, rush it, apologize for it. We say things like, I really need to move on. As though grief is a house we're supposed to vacate on someone else's timeline. But grief is not a detour from healing. It is the healing. The renowned psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross spent her life studying grief. Not just the grief of death, but the grief of all loss, of identity, of relationship, of the future we thought we were going to have. And what she found was this: grief that is not expressed doesn't disappear. It goes underground. And underground, it shapes everything. So the first act of resilience, the very first, is to stop running from what hurts. Not to wallow, not to spiral, but to sit down beside the pain the way you would sit down beside a frightened child, with gentleness, with presence, with the understanding that it is there for a reason. Give yourself permission to grieve what you lost. The relationship, the version of yourself that existed before, the future you were so sure of. You are allowed to mourn these things. And in the mourning, something extraordinary happens. The pain begins, slowly, imperfectly on its own schedule, to move. Grief is not the enemy of healing. It is the path through it. You don't have to be strong right now. You just have to be honest. After a major setback, especially the ones that come in the second half of life, we often discover that the self we thought we were has changed, or that the self we were was never quite fully ours to begin with. Many of the women I know who have walked through profound loss describe the same quiet, disorienting experience. I didn't know who I was anymore. And for the first time, I wasn't sure who I wanted to be. That moment of disorientation, that is not a crisis. That is an opening. Psychologist Carl Rogers believed that the deepest human need is not safety. It is not even love. It is the freedom to become who we actually are. Most of us spent decades becoming who others needed us to be. The devoted wife, the selfless mother, the competent professional, the strong one who never needed anything. And when life dismantled those roles, through loss, through change, through the sheer passage of time, we were left standing in a strange, quiet space. That space? It is a sanctuary. In that space, you have questions you may not have had the quiet to ask before. What do I actually enjoy? Separate from what I do for everyone else. What do I believe? Not what I was told to believe, but what my own soul holds as true. What do I want the next chapter of my life to actually feel like? These are not selfish questions. They are sacred ones. Rebuilding the self after a setback isn't vanity. It's the most important work a woman can do for herself and for every person she loves. Right now, many of you are living inside a story about your setback that someone else or something else wrote for you. The story that says, this happened because you weren't enough. The story that says you should have known better. The story that says you missed your chance and now it's too late. I want to offer you a different kind of story. Not a story that denies the pain. Not a revisionist history where everything was fine, actually. But a story with more truth in it. A story that says I was shaped, not destroyed by what I went through. Dr. Dan McAdams at Northwestern University has spent decades studying narrative identity. How we understand ourselves through the stories we tell about our own lives. And what he has found is this: the people who recover most fully from adversity are not the ones who suffered least. They are the ones who found a way to tell their story as a story of growth, not just of loss. This doesn't mean pretending the loss wasn't real. It means being willing to ask, what did this open in me? What did this teach me? What do I know now about myself, about love, about life that I could not have known any other way? Before we go further, I want to pause for just a moment. If what you've heard so far has touched something real in you, if you felt even one moment of, yais, that is exactly what I've been carrying. Then I gently want to ask you something. Is there one woman in your life right now? A sister, a dear friend, a daughter, a neighbor who is in the middle of something hard? Someone who might be sitting alone tonight wondering if what she's going through means something is fundamentally wrong with her. Not with a long message. You don't even need to explain. Just send it with one line, thinking of you. Watch this when you have a quiet hour. That small act, that one moment of reaching toward another woman, that is how healing travels. Not in lecture halls, not in best-selling books. In the quiet acts of women who say, I see you. You are not alone. Now I want to talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough in conversations about resilience. Not the performance of grace. Not the socially approved composure of a woman who appears to be handling everything beautifully while falling apart inside. But actual grace. The kind that comes from the deepest center of who you are. Grace, in the true psychological and spiritual sense, is the capacity to remain connected to your own goodness, even when external circumstances are trying to tell you that goodness is gone. It is the ability to be devastated and not abandon yourself. to be furious and not let the fury define you, to be confused and not stop trusting the deeper wisdom of your own life. Brene Brown describes this as wholehearted living, and she says it begins with one foundational belief: I am enough, not in spite of my imperfections, not when I have it all together, but now, as I am, in the middle of the mess, I am enough. Grace is not holding yourself together. Grace is knowing, in the very center of falling apart, that you are still and always will be enough. Let me ask you something deeply personal. You don't have to answer out loud, but let it land somewhere real. When did you last treat yourself with the same compassion you would offer a woman you deeply love? When did you last say to yourself, not as a performance, not as a self-help exercise, but as a genuine act of care, you are doing so well. What you are carrying is so heavy, and I am so proud of you. Self-compassion, the research of Dr. Kristen Neff at the University of Texas has demonstrated this conclusively. Self-compassion is not weakness. It is one of the strongest predictors of psychological resilience we have ever measured. Women who are able to meet their own pain with kindness, rather than judgment, recover faster, suffer less, live more fully. And here is the painful irony so many of us carry: we are experts at compassion. We have poured it into children, partners, friends, strangers. We have held space for other people's pain with extraordinary generosity. And we have been absolutely ruthless with ourselves. I want to talk now about one of the most powerful and most misunderstood tools of resilience. Boundaries. That word makes a lot of women uncomfortable. We've been told, directly or indirectly, that having limits makes us cold, selfish, difficult. That love means being endlessly available. That strength means never saying no. But here is the truth that the most psychologically healthy women I have ever known have lived by. A boundary is not a wall. It is a garden gate. You choose who enters. You choose when you open it. And the garden inside, that is where your healing lives. Many of the most significant setbacks in a woman's life are not random misfortunes. They are the accumulated weight of years lived without adequate boundaries. Years of saying yes when the soul was screaming no. Years of tending everyone else's garden while their own went unwatered. Years of absorbing other people's emotions, other people's crises, other people's chaos, at a cost that was never acknowledged. This is not blame. There is no blame here. You did what you were taught, what was expected, what you genuinely believed love required. But resilience, real resilience, asks us to learn, even now, even at this stage of life, that your energy is sacred, that your time is limited, that who and what you allow into your inner space has a profound effect on your ability to heal. Setting a boundary after a setback might look like telling someone who keeps reopening your wound that you need them to stop. Choosing silence over conversations that leave you feeling worse. Giving yourself permission to not explain your grief to people who aren't equipped to hold it. Saying to someone, to the culture, to the old version of yourself, that is enough. I am protecting what is mine now. That is not selfishness. That is sanctuary. You are not obligated to keep watering relationships that only grow in your pain. A boundary is the bravest act of love you can offer, starting with yourself. Boundaries don't mean building walls around the people who deserve your presence. They mean being selective, fiercely, lovingly, unapologetically selective, about where you spend the irreplaceable currency of your time and emotional energy. At this stage of life, you have earned the right to choose differently. You have earned the right to invest in the relationships that fill you, not only the ones that drain you. You have earned the right to say, I love you and I cannot talk about this right now, without guilt swallowing you whole. And you have earned, absolutely earned, the right to spend an entire afternoon doing nothing but sitting in the garden, reading a novel, watching the light change on the wall, without justifying it, without calling it lazy, without earning it first. I want to talk to you now about something I find endlessly beautiful and endlessly true. There is a concept in psychology called post-traumatic growth. You've heard of post-traumatic stress, and that is real, and it deserves every bit of the attention and care we give it. But post-traumatic growth is equally real, and in many ways, it is the more astonishing story. Researchers Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun found that across cultures, across ages, across every kind of trauma imaginable, A significant number of people who experience profound adversity report afterward that they feel stronger than they realized they were, that they have deeper relationships than they had before, that their sense of what matters has become beautifully, powerfully clear, that they feel an openness to new possibilities that they never had before the loss. This is not a consolation prize for suffering. It is the unexpected harvest of a woman who chose to keep going. The second chapter of your life, the one you are living now, or just beginning, is not the consolation version. It is not the quieter, smaller version. It is not the version that exists in the shadow of who you used to be. For many women, it is the truest version. Because you are no longer spending your energy performing. You are no longer contorting yourself into shapes that don't fit you. You are no longer waiting for permission to be exactly who you are. You have been forged. And forged things are harder to break. You are not starting over. You are starting from experience, from wisdom, from scars that became strength. This chapter has a different kind of power, and it is yours. I want to speak for a moment to the woman who is not sure she believes this yet. The woman who is sitting with this video and thinking, that's beautiful for other people. But you don't know what I've been through. You don't know how much was taken from me. You don't know how long I've been carrying this. You're right. I don't know the specific weight of your specific story. But I know this: you are still here. After everything, all of it. You are still here. Still breathing. Still reaching for something. Still awake enough to be in this conversation. That is not nothing. That is extraordinary. Resilience doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always feel like a victory. Sometimes it just feels like surviving Tuesday. Sometimes it's getting dressed when you didn't wanna. Sometimes it's answering a grandchild's question with gentleness, even though your heart was in pieces. You have been resilient, even on the days you were sure you weren't. Before I close, I want to ask you something one more time. Is there a woman in your life who needed to hear what we've talked about today? Not a stranger. Someone real. Someone you've been a little worried about. Someone who's been quieter than usual, or who said something recently that stayed with you. Please send this to her. Don't overthink it. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Just send it with the quiet, powerful message that she deserves. I'm thinking of you. You are not alone. That act of reaching, that is grace in motion. That is how we heal each other. Not with grand gestures, but with the steady, small, sincere acts of women who notice and who show up. We are going to close now. And I want to close the way that honors everything you've carried into this room with you today. I want to offer you something. Not a command. Not a challenge. Just an invitation to receive these words into whatever part of you is still open. You have survived things that were not supposed to be survivable. You have loved people through their darkness, sometimes at great cost to your own light. You have stood at the edge of loss and chosen, again and again, to stay. May you find in the quiet spaces of your days a sanctuary that is yours alone, where you are known and held and loved for exactly who you are. Not for what you do, not for what you carry, for who you simply, irreducibly are. May the setbacks that felt like endings begin to reveal themselves, slowly and in their own time, as the complicated, sacred turning points they always were. May you give yourself, today, right now, the grace you have given so freely to others. And may you know, in the deepest and most unshakable part of yourself, that you were never broken. You are becoming, you are still becoming, and you are so very, very loved.